Something that is very near and dear to me is fat phobicness, fat phobia, I should say. It is kind of rampant here.
Hi, welcome to the Black Experience Japan's Melanated Files. The purpose of this series is to highlight the black people living in Japan. Who are they?
My name is Christine Amelia Barnes, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've been in Japan for 9.5 years. I responded to an ad in newspaper I was a part of when I was in university, and they said, come to Japan, you can get paid, you can get an apartment, and you can teach. I was like, man, that's not real. But I actually applied and got in, and it was an amazing experience. I never intended to come to Japan. I wanted to go to Mexico some reason. I guess because I studied Spanish and a little bit of Portuguese. So that wasn't my intention, but that ad, some reason, just called me. And when I got in, and I went to Osaka at first, and that's how I ended up here. Oh, I'm a business English consultant / teacher. I've liked the kind of subcultures depending on where you go. So I've lived in 4 different prefectures. I live, of course, Tokyo now. I've lived in Sendai, I've lived in Himeji, and I've lived in Osaka. So, of course, those main cities are in different prefectures. They're very different. It might as well be 4 different countries because it is completely different. So I like that, dare I say, diversity within the homogenous society. So yeah, I really enjoy finding out about how different people in different areas act, behaviors, mannerisms. They all differ depending on where they're from. So it's kind of cool. What do I like the least about Japan? That's a good question. Also, well, something that is very near and dear to me is fat phobia, I should say. It is kind of rampant here, unfortunately. I used to be quite larger. I'm just going to say it. I used to be 430 pounds. I'm around 200 now. And it's a very different experience. When you come here, like being the size that I was, or being the size, well, you're living here, I should say, people treat you like a second-class citizen, even more so. People kind of shun you, or they have comments about you. I've been here a long time, so I understand what people say, and they don't know that. So they feel like they can just say anything they want to say about your size or your weight or whatever, and you feel like a subhuman, a kind of creature from the ocean or something. It's very alienating, so staring as well. I would hope that people would get used to more diverse bodies. There needs to be more bodies in this country, beyond race and gender. I mean, like sizes. That is something that really needs to change. So I'm hoping in the future that becomes a different scenario, but I don't enjoy that at all. Or I didn't, rather. Well, when I came to Japan, I was 300 plus, let's say. Unfortunately, an incident with the police in Tokyo, funny enough, kind of emotionally scarred me. I mean, it's a traumatic experience. I wasn't arrested or anything, but they stopped me for something, and they checked my Gaikokujin card or whatever. And yeah, that whole thing, I ended up being detained at the police station for 4 hours because they weren't convinced that I understood enough Japanese, so they were waiting for a translator to come and translate to me what was happening, even though I knew exactly what was happening. Nonetheless, that drove me to become 430 pounds, just to be honest. Yeah, I didn't change my address fast enough. That's what happened. I didn't, because I didn't know there was a 2-week rule apparently when you move from prefecture to prefecture, city to city. You should contact the city hall and change your address within 2 weeks. I had no idea, because I always change my address. Every place I've lived in, I always change my address super late, and they don't care. Just had you sign a paper. Oh, what happened? Did you forget about it? I would be like, yes. And that's all that happened. So to be detained for that when I didn't even know was quite unfair. And yeah, emotionally, I was driven to, unfortunately, eat more, binge more, and that's how I got up to 430 pounds. Yeah, after I moved here about a month, I was stopped, but I didn't change my address within 2 weeks of moving here. So I was 2 weeks late. I was detained for 4 hours because they didn't believe that I understood that much Japanese, even though I did. So they were waiting, quote unquote, for a translator. I don't really believe it, but that's what they said. That's why they kept me for 4 hours. Being 430 pounds and now being around 200, I went on a ketogenic diet. My knee started to bother me. And at 34 years old, that was 2 years ago. So at 34 years old, I was going to an orthopedic doctor for pills and tablets and cortisone shots in my knee with 7-year-old people. That became beyond embarrassing. It became like a burden. So the doctor actually recommended a weight loss clinic for me to go to, and they put me on a ketogenic diet. I'm still on it. It's a lifestyle now. So that's how I got down from 430 to about 200 now. Being a black woman in Japan. Well, it's two-sided. It's a dichotomy. You are either cherished and just reveled in, they love your difference, or they shun you and they look at you strange and they think you're an alien and they don't want to be bothered with you. So yeah, it's a two-sided coin. Unfortunately for me, the difference and reveling in you and wanting to know more about you, that's what got me engaged. So I've been engaged for about 4 years. And I have so many great friends from all over the country because of that. But unfortunately, just walking on the street, people look at you and stare at you and whisper to their friends just because you're different. And of course you find that really unsettling. But I find when you stare at the back, or when you even just say something, whether in English or in Japanese, that usually changes the situation. Either they stop being kind of rude, or they actually engage with you, which happened to me just the other day. I was at the park. Some older people were staring and whispering with each other, and I spoke to them in Japanese, and they were just so shocked. Wow, you speak Japanese? And they had a plethora of questions for me. So that was a nice thing. That's nice to see that happens sometimes. Well, dating in Japan is a tricky thing. You usually have to be the pursuer. I mean, it's good and bad, I guess, because you have first pick kind of on who you want to engage with. I didn't date that much. I mean, I was quite bigger, but honestly, depending on what prefecture I was in, that didn't really matter. So that's another thing. But I would say that as a black woman, it's hard, it's difficult. But if you're willing to put in the work, to ask questions, to engage, to go out, to go to their parents' house, to go to their family's house, that kind of stuff tends to keep men interested in you. And that's kind of how I got engaged eventually. But my fiance was the pursuer. He actually pursued me. So that's what drew me to him. Yeah, that's how it went down. I want to say that in Osaka, that is not that size does not matter, but it's at least kind of concern. It's when you're bigger, it's turned into more of a playful joke. So they tickle you and they poke you and they say, they say that kind of stuff, but it's not to jest you. It's actually just to get closer to you, funny enough. And it becomes a kind of, I don't know if it's a subcultural thing, but it's not that important, I would say, especially in Osaka, in Kansai. When I first got here, I went to USJ, Universal Studios Japan, and I was quite bigger again, so I didn't want to go on any rides or anything. But I went to, I think it was Toho Shinki. They were doing like a little mini concert, and all the fans, of course, they're crazy. They're kind of K-pop / J-pop fans. And I knew the words to one of the songs. I think it was We Are for One Piece. And the whole row turned and looked at me, and they were so shocked that I knew the words in Japanese. And they were just cheering me out, go, go, go. And it was clapping and clapping and clapping and, kind of being really rowdy, but in a good way. So yeah, that was definitely really interesting. Of course, in Kansai that happens, so yeah. Favorite Japanese food is Kansai food, of course, okonomiyaki, takoyaki, what's it called? Akashiyaki. So that's some different kind of way of doing takoyaki in Akashi area. That's kind of near Kobe. And they dip the takoyaki in some kind of soup. That's pretty yummy. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite. My hair, I actually just order stuff from Amazon, and I order raw materials like shea butter, almond oil, whatever, and I actually make it myself. I'm kind of bohemian in that sense, so I like to make my own stuff. I make African black soap myself. I make pomades, gels, whatever myself. So that makes it much easier, not having to depend on conventional products or product brands. The best life advice I've ever received, well, I guess it would be from my mom. My mom always said, well, two things. She said, if you are stuck and don't know which direction to go in, then just stay where you are. And I guess that's where I've been for the last 9.5 years. That's the reason I've stayed in Japan, other than my fiance, of course. Another thing she told me is enjoy your journey. So seeing that I have had quite the journey the last couple of years, I've learned to enjoy myself. And just adding to that, learning to step out is something I'm actually doing this year. And my mom couldn't be prouder of me, so bad advice. Oh, people who've lived here maybe for a year or two and then go back home to Canada, and they give advice that generalizes all of Japan, which is such a fallacy. You cannot generalize Japan. You can't. So yeah, I would say, things like, oh, you have to bow to everybody, and you have to, you have to use your two hands to give the cards to everybody, and you have to use keigo, polite Japanese to everybody. That kind of advice just doesn't really make sense. I mean, people in Osaka and Kansai barely use keigo, so it just doesn't match up. If the world was listening, I would say keep your mind focused on your goals, but keep your mind open to what comes to you. That's what I would say to everybody. You have to keep yourself focused on what you want to accomplish in this life, but at the same time, you have to be open to whatever person or people or group of people or experience that comes your way.
What do you want to accomplish in Japan?
Okay. So other than being a teacher, I would say that I really want to get into music. I'm a little bit of a singer. So that's something I would love to pursue. And, I have a real passion for weight loss and living a healthy lifestyle now. So I would love, actually, my YouTube channel to take off a little bit, have that be a little, side gig. So that's something definitely I'd like to have happen in the future. My advice for Black women, if you come to Japan, don't be afraid. Don't be put off by the negative people, because there's always going to be negative people. If you are a plus size woman, I would advise you to go to Kansai first, just from my own experience, because your level of acceptance will be a little bit higher than different areas that I've been in. I can only speak on where I've been. So I would say go to Kansai first. Actually, I would say that to every Black person. Go to Kansai first. See how that works for you, and then go to, you know, any other place you're interested in. You can find me on, what's it called? Instagram. Instagram, my name is, well, my real name, Christine Barnes, or you can find me under The Renaissance. And you can email me at Gmail. If you are interested in weight loss stuff, please email me.
Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see weekly videos about the Black experience in Japan, feel free to subscribe to this channel. If you know someone that would like to be featured, or if you yourself would like to be featured, send us a message on our Facebook page at The Black Experience Japan, or send us a tweet on Twitter at TheBlackXJP. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.